ask anyone who owns a greenhouse, if you could start over, what would you do differently? And the number one answer is, I'd go bigger. But how big is big enough for you? Hi, I'm Trevor with Greenhouse Emporium, and in this video, we'll help you avoid the most common regret and guide you to find the perfect greenhouse size for your needs. Picking the right size greenhouse can be tricky. If you go too small, you'll run out of room quickly. If you go too big, it just might overwhelm your space or your budget. But you see, that's not all. A small greenhouse can heat up within 100 degrees within just a few hours if it isn't vented properly, and it can cool down just as quickly as soon as that sun sets. Well, why is that? Small greenhouses lack the thermal mass to retain the heat effectively. They warm up and they cool down rapidly because they just don't have enough material inside to store the heat. Now, on the other hand, larger greenhouses take longer to heat up and to cool down, providing a more stable temperature. Well, that's better for your plants. This stability can make all the difference, especially if you're growing, temperature-sensitive crops. While this might sound like you should run out right away and buy a 20 by 100 greenhouse, hold your horses for a bit. You still might have to run heaters and fans. And due to the increased square footage, this might get pricey because, you're going to need more powerful heaters and exhaust fans. Now, there is a balance that you want to keep. If you're not using half of your greenhouse, well, that's a waste of money. You want to keep your greenhouse filled with plants. Did you know that by simply keeping your greenhouse loaded with plants, you're adding thermal mass as well? Well, an empty greenhouse will experience way bigger temperature fluctuations than a lush, crowded greenhouse. And remember, the quality of the greenhouse, like the insulation and glazing materials, play a huge role here, as we've covered in one of our more recent videos. We'll put the link down below. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious. How much space do you even have? Now, this is mainly a concern for folks in the urban or suburban areas who have smaller backyards. So I'm going to try to keep this pretty short. Look at your yard, measure things, and write down the maximum space. Make sure to leave 2 to 3 feet of clearance around your greenhouse for maintenance. Trust me, you'll thank yourself later. And I would also recommend watching our video on greenhouse placement, for more factors to consider. Now, this is where it gets interesting, so make sure to pay close attention. Your intended use plays a huge role in determining the size of the future of your greenhouse, and planning by section will help you to visualize what works best. This also involves planning ahead. Don't just think about what you're going to do right now. Think about what you're going to do in the next few weeks, possibly even the next few months. I'm going to give you some really good examples so you can get the most out of this video. And please don't skip ahead because it's all connected. Are you ready? Let's dig in. So, are you only starting seeds in the early spring so that you can get a head start for your garden? Well, a smaller greenhouse like an 8x8 or even a 6x8 might just do the trick for you. As long as you're utilizing the vertical space with, say, shelving, you can fit, hundreds of seedlings in there. Again, it all depends on how many plants you want to start with, or if you're using like succession planting or starting everything at the same time. So for our trays here, for example, you can fit 72 seedlings in this 11 by 21 tray. This means that you could fit at least 8 trays if you're using the full length of an 8x8 greenhouse. That'd be roughly 576 seedlings. Now, I could go out there and count all the plants we have in our garden that's starting to feed just 2 people, but I'm sure it's not even close to 576 plants. Well, maybe with the garlic and the onions. No, that wouldn't be possible. Now, obviously, you might need to plan ahead for when you're ready to repot these little guys into larger pots. The good news is that you'd still have the other side of your greenhouse, and you can use the staging or shelvings, it helps to add more growing space. If you're also planting plants inside your greenhouse, you'll have to plan this section as well. While you probably got seedlings going all the time, you also want to allow for some bigger plants in pots, raised beds, or in the ground. An 8x12 greenhouse would still work for this, but your space would be limited. This is when the planning comes a bit more complex. So if you're planning to have a seating area along with your plants, an 8x12 might feel a bit cramped. But people do tend to make it work, but it is tight. If relaxing inside your greenhouse is a priority, you're going to want to look at sizes like, say, a 10x16 or possibly larger. This will allow you to dedicate space for both plants and for a comfortable seating zone. Now, if you want to keep your gardening supplies inside your greenhouse, you should also have to, dedicate a storage area for pots, soils, and the whatnots. Now, this can take over quite a bit of space. So mapping out the zones for starting seedlings, for pots, storage, growing, lounging, well, you're going to want to come up with a pretty good idea of how much space that you're really going to need. Oh, and don't forget about height. Are you growing tall plants like fruit trees? Well, in our case, more like an eggplant. But make sure your greenhouse has enough vertical space to accommodate for your taller plants comfortably. But it can also help if you grow with trellises or for vining plants. Ultimately, the perfect greenhouse size is about balancing your current needs with what you want to grow into. And remember, most greenhouses are not expandable, so planning for your future needs now is key to avoiding your regrets later. What if you wanted to add more thermal mass or passive heating later? Or, what if you want to add a pond later? Yes, I've actually seen that. So sit down and think about how you're going to do this with your greenhouse and picking the ideal greenhouse, sizing accordingly to fit the needs that you want. So thanks for watching, y'all. And if you found this video helpful, you might want to check out this next one. So thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all later.